Modular. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Thinking Modular. If you didn't see the previous video, I highly recommend, since I'm gonna expand this idea of feedback frequency modulation. If this is a topic that you find interesting, perhaps I would recommend you to subscribe in order to receive notifications about new releases. So, let's start. I have here a Reaktor ensemble already prepared, and I would like you to hear for a moment. So, as you can see, is very gestural, very similar to the previous patch. So, just to clarify, the main idea here is to try to create, let's say, a sort of artificial intelligence. It's not really artificial intelligence, but the basic idea departs from this concept. So I don't know if you are aware, but artificial intelligence, the algorithm, more or less to summarize, works in this way. The machine learns by the previous experience, that in this sense the information that it received before, and then with this information he start behavior in a more autonomous way. Okay, so in this sense feedback is actually related with artificial intelligence somehow. And as you can see, I have only one sound source, that is a oscillator, and then the only thing I use is comparators and this dual function generator. In one channel is using the slew limiter and envelope follower. So I'm transforming the signal, and then is being modulated by several connections, and then everything returns back to modulate the frequency. Okay, and you end up with a very gestural. So this is only one sound source, an oscillator. And it doesn't really need too much human interaction in order to develop this gesture that is so. If I start changing some parameters, now you have another completely result, although still similar because of the nature of the circuit. But I find this very interesting, the way that we can create circuits that somehow they learn how to behave, giving the information from the sound source and the whole path and the transformations of the waveform, and then when it returns back to the origin to modulate itself, to introduce a new experience to the oscillation. I'm talking in a very metaphorical way, but it's more or less how it works. So let's try to do this from scratch. I use Reaktor. Of course, you can also use whatever environment do you want. If you have a modular system, these concepts and these connections you can also put on practice. I don't promise that you will have exactly the same results as you expect, because depend of your oscillator, depend of the modules that you are using. But one thing I guarantee you, you will find very interesting sounds and very gestural. So let's start. So first of all, I will need a comparator. Put in your checklist to buy it, because you need a comparator in your modular system. So let's find a comparator in utilities. I organize this in the way in order to not keep browsing all the time. So I have a comparator, and I also gonna need a VCA, and I'm gonna connect the VCA on the comparator. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect my output from the oscillator on the comparator, and from the VCA I connect it back on FM. So now we have a sine wave, but as soon as I start open the VCA, you see it's starting modulating. See? Okay, so very clear. And the comparator is an integrator, because it just transforms the signal. It just extracts gates from the signal, as you can see here. So in my first channel I have my sine wave, and on the second channel in orange I have my my comparator. In this case is working in a bipolar, so it goes to the negative and positive. So if I increase my threshold, now the gate is narrow. Let's keep going. Now what I need is a dual function generator, where one of the channels is going to be used as a envelope follower to slow the wave and transform the wave somehow. So let's here you go. So I connect my output on the first channel in the input, okay, and I'm gonna put on slew, and the only thing is gonna do, as you can see, is gonna track my I'm gonna put a square wave. It's gonna track my waveform, my original waveform, and as soon as I start rising, it start slewing, as you can see. It slews, and then on the fall time as well. So you can actually transform a square wave in a triangle, for instance, in a kind of not triangle, but a kind of a shark tooth, let's say. So, and there is something that I really like to do it, that is using since I have two channels, I want to do a cross modulation in between both channels, and I will need a attenuator. So there it is. So the attenuator is very useful, because you can increase the level on the positive direction, but you can also invert it, as you can see. So now what I'm gonna do is I need another attenuator, okay, and I'm gonna connect on the second channel on this attenuator. And in one side I'm gonna use as a slew limiter and envelope follower, and another side I'm gonna use as a loop. On the yellow, as you can see, so I have my fall time and my rise time. Is on yellow. So I can do, for instance, a triangle. Yes. And I can as well like invert it. Yeah. So this is very useful. And now what I'm going to do is my channel 1 is going to modulate the channel 2. So I connect here in modulation A, and now is flickering. And I'm gonna modulate the fall time, for instance. And as you can see now, it's changing the waveform. See? Very useful. And now what I'm going to do is my channel 2 is going to modulate the channel 1. So I connect on B, and I also going to modulate the fall time here. Okay? And now my original waveform, that is a square wave, now it's not a square wave anymore. And I can put on a negative range. See, so in this way I can extract from the original sound source different waveforms that somehow are connected, because on this section here they are cross modulating. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use the second channel, because I want to create this kind of repeated gesture. I'm going to connect the output on my to modulate my VCA. Okay, so I'm going to put here the VCA, and as you can see now it's flickering, and I'm going to put it on maximum here, and I'm going to invert. Okay, so now as you can hear, let me just put the volume a bit down. So now I forgot to open the FM. So as you can see, it's pretty much this. So now let's keep going, because we still have a lot of connections to do. For instance, perhaps would be useful if I could modulate my threshold, right? To have different kind of sounds. Okay? So for these, what I'm gonna use is a very important module that is sample and hold. And the sample and hold, what it does, I have here connecting on yellow. you have to connect your sound source in the input of the sample and hold, and then you need to connect something on the gate. So every time it receives a gate, it frees the voltage at that point. So let's use for now the second channel to gate it to see what it happens. You see now on the yellow. So now he's doing this modulation here. Every time he receives a gate, it frees the voltage at that point. See, it freezes it here, then it freezes there, and then there, and then there. And then what I'm gonna do with these is I'm gonna modulate my comparator. As you can see, now the comparator is moving, the threshold is moving. And now, see? Good. So now, I raise the question. At this point, I only have the sound. The sound result is coming from this frequency modulation through this feedback from the comparator. And if somehow I want to switch to another frequency modulation, for instance, to switch in between the modulation from the comparator and from the fixed value that I have here in my oscillator, for instance, these 10.99 Hertz. Switch, as the name says, I need a switch. So let's go to find a switch, and I have a switch here, okay? And what I do is, if you can see now, the output that is the switch, what it does is alternating between the input 1 and the input 2. So it only outputs one of the channels. And at this point is the channel 2 that is being output. And if I connect in my scope, it's clearly 0. So if I connect these on FM, it means that it is not going to do any modulation on my oscillator, because it's just sending 0 volts. This means that what I'm going to do is going to connect this instead of connecting the VCA directly on the FM, as you can see highlighted in blue, this wire blue, I'm going to connect on the first channel, okay? But now I need something to gate, because the switch needs to receive a gate in order to switch between channels. By the way, if you use Reaktor, you have to put here instant, because otherwise it's just going to try to do smooth passage, and that's not what we want. So you put instant. So, but the problem now is that we are in a audio rate domain, so we are gonna not hear the original pitch, because it's everything so fast that is gonna blend on the whole process. So if I connect this in my FM, I forgot that I need a gate. Okay, so let's use the rise on the channel 1. So I'm going to use these here to switch. As you can see, now it's switching. So now I already have connected these on my FM modulation. Let's see how it works. So as you can see, so it's alternating very fast in between my original frequency and the modulation from the comparator. And perhaps maybe I want to have some control over these. And since since this is receiving gates, I can slow down the change by using a clock divider. So let's try to find a clock divider here. Here's a clock divider. So now what I'm going to do is I'm connecting the rising on the clock, and then from the clock to the gate. And now I can, every 13 gates, it only throws the gate. Yes? See, now is more clear. Good. Now, let's keep going on. Now, what I can do is alternate my comparator, and maybe to have certain different pitches, I can use a sequencer, for instance. Okay. I could also use my sample and hold. So the sample and hold, as I told you, is tracking and freezing the voltage at certain point of the wave. So if I connect it here, let's see what it happens now. See? Good. You could use or either a sample and hold, since you are already using, or you could also use a sequencer. Okay, and you connect the sequencer on the second channel, and you can use, for instance, this gate here from the clock divider to move one step forward. Yes, so let's use only 3 steps for now. And now let me put the volume up. See? And in this way you have more control over the pitches that you use. And you can use also more steps. Good. So now I did this in the previous video and I'm gonna do it again. Okay. We want to give a little bit more color to the sound because we are using a very percussive sound, and maybe we want to use these pulses to ping a filter. And since I really like stereo fields, I'm gonna use here a dual filter somewhere here. I really love this dual filter. So what are we gonna do? We are gonna connect our output in the first input and also on the second input. Okay, and then we open here, we mix it. This is all about functionality, blah blah blah. So now I want to modulate the frequency of the channels. of the two channels. So I'm going to use the dual function generator, the first channel to modulate the first channel and the second channel to modulate the second channel. Good. And now I'm going to need another mixer. Let's fetch another mixer very fast. So one that have more channels. And now I also need to create a very interesting stereo field. I'm going to use a delay. Okay, I already explained this in a previous video, so I'm not actually waste too much time on that. So let me find a delay. Here's it. So what you're gonna do is that from the filter 1 you connect on the left, from the filter 2 on the right, and then here you invert. You connect the filter 1 on the right and the filter 2 on the left, and then so on. And then this final mix you connected on the output. Good. So let's raise the... So now we put the mix on maximum, no feedback. Good. Now to pink a delay, we need to raise the resonance. Okay, so now remember that I want to modulate my channel, so I have to open this attenuator. And I can have like a low pass filter, band pass or high pass. Good. So now, since we have the whole elements, now this is just a matter of playing with the buttons. So as you can see now, if I so let's mess here a bit with the moth. So as you can see, it's very gestural. As you can see now, it's just a matter of finding sweet spot. So as you can see, every time I change some parameter, it just gives me a different answer. I find this very beautiful. So I hope you enjoy this video. So see you, bye bye.